Hi, I'm Clayton Wick, and this is Destroy All Nerds. This video is the first in a series of critical reviews of video games, some classic and some not. My goal with the series isn't to review games, but to examine them with the same sort of critical eye that has largely been reserved for other art forms. If we're going to have a discussion on the subject of what makes a game good, we might as well start with one we can probably all agree is pretty darn good: Super Mario Bros. This is the start of one of the most popular video game series of all time. Developed by Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka, Super Mario Bros. Was, for many Americans, their introduction to the Nintendo Entertainment System, if not video games as a whole. It's easy for us to forget that in Japan, Super Mario Bros. Was not a launch title for the Famicom. In Japan, the system launched in 1983, a whole 2 years before Super Mario Bros. Was released. Over there, the big system-moving launch title was Donkey Kong. For that reason, this video will do a lot to examine the key differences between those two games. If you'd like to learn more about the early days of the NES, I highly recommend you check out the video series Crontendo, in which a very knowledgeable and clearly insane man reviews every game for the system in chronological order. Look below this video for a link to that if you're interested in doing some further research. So if Super Mario Bros. Is such an obviously good game, why is a video series geared toward being critical of games devoting an entire episode to it? Mostly because it's really hard to have a conversation about good game design and what that means without at some point invoking the name Mario. This is a game that does so many things so well and is so influential toward the development of video games as a whole that it's actually pretty easy to neglect just what makes the game great. Super Mario Bros. Isn't the first platformer. Donkey Kong is probably the first, as it was the first side-scrolling game where you can jump to avoid obstacles, and Pitfall was the first to incorporate a multi-screen environment where you move from left to right. I don't actually own a working Atari 2600, so just imagine really hard that I've got some footage of Pitfall Harry getting eaten by a crocodile at about this point in the video. Super Mario Bros. Also isn't the first platformer that Shigeru Miyamoto worked on, as that honor instead goes to Donkey Kong. In fact, Super Mario Bros. Isn't even the first game in which Miyamoto worked alongside Takashi Tezuka, as the two collaborated on Devil World a year prior. Huh. I wonder why a game in which you use crosses to defeat a line-dancing version of Satan never made it to American shores. So, what makes Super Mario Bros. As a game so special? Two big things: the world, and the way the game allows you to interact with it. Super Mario Bros. Is the first platformer that gives you a whole world to explore. I'm as guilty as anyone else of occasionally making fun of the game's trippy, mushroom-based aesthetic, but Super Mario Bros. Is maybe the first video game to really create a sense that the characters inhabit a larger world. That's right. Even if you play Mass Effect just to read the codex entries and mac on aliens, you as a video game player owe a debt to Super Mario Bros. Garrus, you complete me. What makes this such a cool concept, though, is that Super Mario Bros. Is a game that is filled, top to bottom, with stuff to find. World 1-1 is practically a how-to on putting together a proper first level for a video game. In one level, we are introduced to all core elements of the game, including all 3 power-ups in the Magic Mushroom, the Fire Flower, and the Invincibility Star. The game introduces you to the Goomba and the Koopa Troopa here as well, the 2 most common enemies you'll be facing throughout the game. There's a shortcut in one of the pipes, and there's an invisible 1-up right there by it. This is a huge deal. A starting player might not find both, but there's a good chance he'll find one or the other, and that right there tells someone completely unfamiliar with the series that Super Mario Bros. Is a game with lots of secrets, and a lot of the fun the game has to offer comes from finding them. The game's storyline is an evolution of the one introduced in Donkey Kong. There, Shigeru Miyamoto built a story around a love triangle involving a man, a woman, and a gorilla. With Super Mario Bros., he tweaks the concept to allow for something out of a fairy tale. Mario is still Mario, but damsel in distress Pauline is replaced by Princess Toadstool, and Donkey Kong is traded out for Bowser. Let's talk about character design for a second. Mario is a marvel of character design when you consider the limited resources in play. 8-bit sprites only allow for 3 colors, and they've never been used to greater effect than they are with Mario. His simple design still easily conveys the shape of a person. Mario's hat covers up the difficulty of drawing hair with 3 colors in a tiny number of pixels, and the two-tone shirt and overalls outfit provides just enough definition that Mario's movement is clearly animated and easy to understand whether he's big or small. Bowser's another interesting case. His original design appears as the artwork for the original Japanese Super Mario Bros. Cartridge, and was drawn by Shigeru Miyamoto himself. Originally, Bowser was based on the Ox Demon King from Journey to the West, but artist Yoichi Kotabe pointed out that Miyamoto's design more closely resembled a turtle than an ox. From there, the sprite was redesigned to incorporate elements of the Koopa Troopas under Bowser's command, and, mostly by accident, we ended up with the design we associate with the character today. Sadly, Princess Toadstool is kind of a non-entity in this game. She's a single sprite that appears on a single screen, and that sprite honestly isn't as well designed as others she'd be getting on the NES. I could go full Anita Sarkeesian at this point, but video game storytelling was in its infancy, and if I'm going to talk about women Nintendo has ruined, Peach is not the first one to come to mind. Don't get me wrong, I do love the character, but we'll be getting to her in another video. Even with Toadstool's near absence from the game, there's good reason for this love triangle to be more popular than the one in Donkey Kong. Since the story of Super Mario Bros. Takes place in a better realized world, one including backgrounds and a unified aesthetic, it lends a greater sense of depth even though such a thing is hardly communicated in the gameplay. Let's be honest, even in 1985, "Thank you, Mario, but our princess is in another castle," did not make for a particularly riveting narrative. Nonetheless, Super Mario Bros. Succeeds where other games failed in that it really gets across the idea that Mario is going on an epic journey. The left-to-right movement, seen as a limitation by later designers, here creates a constant sense of progress. Each level has enough differences from the one before it to convey a sense of changing environment, and with each castle the player feels as though he or she is getting that much closer to finding Princess Toadstool. I've already brushed up against quite a bit of the gameplay mechanics that make Super Mario Bros. Revolutionary simply by talking about elements of level design, but now, let's get into some of the nuts and bolts stuff that really helps the game find its stride. As we get into this part of the video, it's worth remembering that at the time Super Mario Bros. Was released, the arcade scene was still thriving, and the true measure of a player's ability was whether or not he held a high score. Many elements of the game are consciously designed in ways which allow the player multiple options in progressing through the game, but with one optimal method if the player is pursuing the high score. Take, for instance, World 1-1. I already mentioned earlier that this level introduces all of the immediately apparent mechanics the game has to offer, but there's one that most people miss because they take the invincibility star. If you take the star, sure, you get 1,000 points off the bat and 200 for every enemy you kill until the star runs out. That's not a terrible haul, but if you're going for points, there's a better solution, and you may not have ever noticed it. Ignore the star, and instead jump on the Koopa Troopa, kick the shell, and follow it. You'll rack up thousands more points in the process, even if it is a little trickier to pull off. The game never asks you to do this, but there are hints that it's there. World 3-2 is made up almost entirely of these scoring opportunities, and the player is bound to discover the point benefits in kicking shells by accident if nothing else, if he makes it to this level. Once you've learned the trick from that stage, you can apply it to others. The really devious thing, though, is that the invincibility star is the suboptimal choice almost every time it comes up. The next time you play the game, skip the stars and look for a Koopa Troopa. You'll be surprised just how many times there's a cool trick you can do with a shell instead of just plowing through enemies head first. This is a mark of good game design, because it allows for a beginning player to have an easy way to get through what could be a tough obstacle, while at the same time allowing for a more advanced player to reap the rewards that come from his higher skill level. That demonstration of greater skill resulting in greater reward is carried over into the game's power-up system. The mushroom grants you an extra hit and the ability to break blocks with your head, and the invincibility star allows you to defeat enemies simply by running into them, but the fire flower provides an intermediate point in skill versus reward. Jumping on enemies and making proper use of shells provides the greatest possible reward from defeating an enemy. The fire flower allows you an easier means of killing enemies for fewer points, and the invincibility star removes all other scoring options for a limited period of time. The sense of accomplishment that comes from a properly placed fireball, combined with its relative ease of use compared to chain jumping or shell combos, provides a beginning player with an obvious means of improvement, development, and reward. In other words, Call of Duty's infamous NoobTube grenade launcher has its roots in an 8-bit flower. By almost every metric you can imagine, this is a good game that is worth playing, and if you've never played it, you should get on that right now. Life is short, and I don't want any of you getting hit by a bus tomorrow and thinking, my life is incomplete because I never played Super Mario Bros. I'm reasonably certain that's how ghosts are made. Play this game. It is good. Next episode, we talk about a bad game. I'm Clayton Wick, and this has been Destroy All Nerds.